If you can't find the perfect fit for your first IC role, do not be discouraged. I recommend trying on a few opportunities until you find the right one for you. You have to be strategic in advocating for yourself. Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a free resource for women who work in the sports and entertainment industry. Each week, we get real and talk about the things that hold us back and how we can overcome them and keep climbing to the top. And the top is however you define it. We talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Consider this podcast your secret weapon. You will learn from the best in the business and be able to take immediate action with all the advice that you hear. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake, a leadership development coach and consultant. I've worked in sports for 20 years. 15 of those years were spent working for the Red Sox, Dodgers, and the Cubs. After 15 years of working in the front office, I took a leap of faith and I started my own business. Friends, as a Black woman in sports, I know that the industry can take a toll on your confidence and sometimes leave you feeling defeated. Join me each week so I can support you on your journey. I promise you, each week you will feel stronger and more confident than the week before. So let's get started with this week's episode. This year, I was lucky enough to be part of my 7th Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was in Glendale, Arizona, which you guys all probably know. And it's actually where I worked my very first Super Bowl. A lot has changed over the years. My first Super Bowl, I was working at the Chicago Cubs. It was at that very Super Bowl that I met so many independent contractors. Independent contractors are also known as ICs. That's just the easy way to say it. So that's what I'm going to use throughout this episode. So I met so many independent contractors, ICs, that didn't have full-time jobs. And what I learned when I was talking to them was that was by design. When the Super Bowl was over, they weren't like me and going back to work at their full-time job. They were moving on to the next contract, whenever that was. Could be 2 weeks from then. It could be a month from that date. They were kind of living this life that I started to envy. I envied their freedom. It was then that I realized that at that point in my career, the 9 to 5 or the 9 until whenever the last pitch was thrown and the ballpark was cleared out, that it no longer served my lifestyle. Now it's important that you realize, for me, I didn't view the IC life as easier. I viewed it as different, if not more work. But the most important thing, I felt like it was a path that I was supposed to head down. I don't know, it was something in my gut. It took a few more years of soul searching and trying on a few things that didn't work for me. And then finally coming back to what I've always wanted to do, which was venturing out on my own. I started my own company, the J. Blake Group, and I took on contract work and consulting clients. I kind of created a business that just suited who I was and what I wanted. My first project was a 6-month contract working on the Super Bowl and Pro Bowl. Now, this episode is less about the path that I took and more about the various unique paths that are available to you. So if you want to work on one big sporting event a year while you have a full-time job, you can do that. If you want to be a full-time IC, you can do that too. So today I'm going to talk about how you can make that happen. Now, I love that y'all always slide into my DMs and ask if you can work for me at the Super Bowl. I had one of you offer to carry my clipboard and be my intern. No joke. I'll use a clipboard, just so you know. And I don't have a need for an intern, not right now, but I appreciate your offer. Whatever you want your career to look like, you can design it to be exactly just that. Is that always easy? Absolutely not. The people who are online telling you it's easy and just go for it and pick up and just do it. Please manage your expectations. So it's not easy, but if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. So here's how I'm going to help you. A lot of you have asked me, how can you work events like Super Bowl, MLB All-Star, NBA All-Star, and other large-scale sporting events? I'm going to share everything I know. What I want you to do is take what you need, leave the rest. And hey, do me a favor. If this is helpful, send me a message on Instagram or a message on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you. And I'd love to hear how this episode helped you and what your biggest takeaways were. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, let's do this. Okay, I'm excited. I'm going to share 3 tips on getting a contract. I'm not going to lie to you. The third tip is like jam-packed. So it should probably be like multiple, but it's all under one big category. So stay with me to the end because that's where you get a lot of bang for your buck. Tip number 1, leverage your network. If you're listening to this and you work for a major league team, you have an advantage. Or if you work with an agency that does a lot of work with a major league team, there's an advantage there. Reach out to the league office and connect with someone who is part of the team who puts on those large scale events. So for example, let's take the NBA. If you've always wanted to work the NBA All-Star, who are the people in the NBA office who are executing the event? Everyone in the office touches it, but who is accountable for it and who reports to that person? My experience has always been that the leagues will let you know of opportunities, but there's a big but there. You have to ask. So since you already work for a team, it's easier for you to reach out because you're in that inner circle. Now, you might not know how you can get involved. You might not know how your expertise might help. And that's okay. Put that to the side for a minute. Step one is finding out what's available. Sometimes the roles that are available have zero to do with your background. However, the event producers want to fill those roles with someone who gets the industry and someone who's not going to be a fish out of water when the event starts. Someone from the community asked me, can people like me come help on a team that could use my skills in a more tactical way? Meaning, can I work for somebody who can really use what I do? The answer is yes. And it may take you getting your feet wet first, expanding your network while you're there, and then advocating for yourself in a very natural way. I talk about that in a couple of different episodes. Advocate for yourself in a natural way, how you can bring additional value to that group that you're working for. My first role in Super Bowl was adjacent to the work that I did in my full-time job with the Cubs. So I took the contract for several reasons. The most important one is that it was a Super Bowl. I wanted to be a part of it. It was described to me. Now, this may make you laugh. This may scare you. I would love to know your reaction to this, but it was described to me as it would be the best and worst week of my life. Friends, let me tell you, that was accurate. I got on site in Glendale, Arizona, my first Super Bowl, and I was able to leave my title that I had with the Cubs, did not matter. I was able to leave my ego. Sometimes I have a big one. It happens. And I was able to leave that at the door. And I was able to jump in, and my focus became, I want to help my client succeed. That was it. That's what I was there to do. I had a role and I was going to help her because I knew the part that I played led up into a bigger part. And if we all didn't do our job, then she wasn't going to succeed. So that's what I was there to do. And I was able to do that. Now, fast forward to the Houston Super Bowl. After the Arizona Super Bowl, 2 years later, I started my own business. I finally took that leap of faith, launched my own business, and I was able to jump into a role at Super Bowl that was aligned to my expertise. Now, that had to do with incredible timing. They weren't waiting for me to make up my mind if I was going to be full-time anymore, if I was going to start my own business. No. They were not waiting for me. It was incredible timing. I made that decision, and my client had a need at that same moment. I decided to make that jump into entrepreneurship. So you're going to hear this theme a lot. You're going to hear from some of my friends in the IC world, and they're going to talk about how a lot of it has to do with timing. Now, I recognize that my story will not be your story. However, I will say this. If you can't find the perfect fit for your first IC role, do not be discouraged. I recommend trying on a few opportunities until you find the right one for you. You have to be strategic in advocating for yourself. If you need support crafting a message, head to the show notes and set up a consult with me. A free one. I'm happy to help support you. If you don't work for the team in the major or minor leagues, that's okay. Please do not feel discouraged. I know a ton of ICs who leave their full-time jobs, come and work something like a Super Bowl, and then go back to the full-time job that has nothing to do with sports. So don't feel discouraged at all. You still can leverage your network. First step, identify what event you want to work. Step 2, identify who in your network can introduce you to someone who is a part of that event. This is where you're going to have to do some research. This is where you have to be strategic about who you approach and how you do it. My recommendation is when you get someone to say yes to meeting with you, get them on a Zoom call, make eye contact with them, let them see your face. And so it's just not a voice on the other end of the call. Is that easy? Totally not. But again, let's not forget, if this were easy, everyone would be doing it. When you are trying to reach out to people, be persistent. A lot of people worry that they're bothering people. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to bother them. That is fine. I understand that. But if you let that stop you, you're just going to be on the outside, always looking in. So keep these things in mind. You need to take action. When you take action, you need to do it with integrity and you need to be persistent. So just keep those 3 things in mind when you're talking to people. And when you're sending people a follow-up message, make sure you do it in a way that you would want to receive that. If you listen to episode number 6, I talk about episode number 6, we are going way back. I talk about how to get someone to say yes, someone you don't know to say yes to taking a meeting with you. So definitely, I'll link that episode in the show notes for you. Definitely listen to that. One last tip when it comes to leveraging your network. This one I love. After a big sporting event, everybody post on LinkedIn, including myself, about their experience. Now, if you are connected to someone who does that, hello, red flag, or no, white flag, that makes no sense either. Some sort of colored flag, right? That is your cue. Reach out to them. Ask them if they would be open to a Zoom call to share about their experience. Don't be shy. Now is not the time for that. Don't be worried that they might say no or not respond. I mean this with love. And if you have kids in the car or whatever near you, close their earmuffs. Who the fuck cares? You are going to get a lot of no's in your career. It happens to all of us. We have to rely on our village of people who are standing behind us to help us shake off those no's and keep moving. I know for a fact they can impact you and they sometimes hurt, and that's okay, but do not let those stop you. Once you get a person on a Zoom call, be transparent and ask all the questions. Be prepared with a list of things you are hoping to get out of the call. And hey, listen, please do not write a list of things you hope to get out of the call and then also write a list of questions and then just read them off. That's happened to me and I will answer them, right? No one's going to not answer you, but you can't have a genuine conversation when you are just reading a list of questions. My tip from that aspect is to practice, so you feel more comfortable when you do get on a call. But do not read a list of questions off and just check them off and then move on to the next one. That is not the art of conversing. Now, if you feel like you have a good call, don't be afraid to ask them to make an introduction to someone in their network who can help you get one step closer to working whatever big sporting event that you have your eyes set on. The last thing I'll say about networking to find contract work is that there are people out there who want to help. You have to go out and find them, and then you have to ask for the help that you need. It's okay to ask people for help. And if you need creative ways on how to say it, don't be afraid to reach out to me and set up a free consult with me. And I'm happy to give you like 2 or 3 questions to ask, and it'll be super easy. See, I'm happy to help. People want to help, but you have to go find them. All right, let's move into tip number 2. Find the vendors. This is one of my favorites. Do you ever notice during big events like Super Bowl, World Cup, All-Star, there are a lot of companies posting about being part of this event? Those are your people. Okay, really quickly, how to find them. Step 1, go into research mode. What does that company do? Could you bring value by being a part of that team? Step 2, check your existing network. See if someone can make an introduction for you. If not, reach out cold, introduce yourself, and see if they will be willing to jump on a 20-minute call with you. Zoom call. Here's what happens at these large-scale sporting events. You may already know this, so I'm talking to people who are not aware of this. Leagues rely on thousands of vendors to execute their vision. And the vendors always want to exceed expectations. A lot of time, these vendors have to increase their staffing levels for the event. Enter you. The perfect IC. They want someone they can trust and someone who is going to come in, put their head down, grind, and help them look good. At the end of the day, everybody wants to do right by their client. So if you're working for a vendor who is hired by the NBA for All-Star, you would be doing subcontract work, but you're still an IC and you're still working on NBA All-Star. So your client is the vendor. The vendor's client is the NFL. You see how the subcontracting works? At the end of the day, everybody wants to please their client and exceed expectations. So my recommendation to you is that you find a vendor that you can be an IC for and demonstrate to them how you would add value and how they can trust you to deliver. Now, it may be difficult to get your foot in the door, but I don't want you to be discouraged. Persistence is going to be your best friend. Do it with integrity. Do it with how you would want people to be persistent with you. Listen to real advice from Ellie Kehoe, former vice president of volunteer programs and event strategy for the Miami Super Bowl host committee.
The hardest part about landing an IC role is getting in with a company. Most companies have ICs that they use year after year, and so it's all about timing. It's all about who you know, when and where the opportunity is that you really have to nail down and be persistent in order to get the contracts that you want.
Now, let me give you a tip on how LinkedIn can be your bestie for both leveraging your network and finding your vendors. You may already know this, but I love this one. You can search for posts. That's not groundbreaking. But how many of us do this? So for example, you can search MLB All-Star. You can search Super Bowl and filter it to show posts by people. And then you can filter it even further to show either first, second, and third connections. And just like that, you can see who posted about MLB All-Star or Super Bowl, whatever search you decide. You will see individuals and you will see companies. And from there, do your research and be strategic who you reach out to. I will tell you this. If you become a serial connector, people will see right through that. Be intentional. Remember, take your action. Do it all with integrity and be persistent. So I'm excited for tip number 3. Be prepared. Now, underneath be prepared is like 5 or 6 different tips, but they all fit underneath this umbrella. So I'm going to keep them here. So tip number 3 is jam-packed. So if you have a full-time job, you will most likely have to take vacation in order to take contract work. That seems to be the norm, unless you work for a company who's just like, don't worry about it. It's on us. I don't know anyone like that. If you're like that, let me know. If you have a full-time job and you have to take vacation, think about what's worth it and what's not. You may want to have selection criteria. Just like Katie Dixon, she is the director of marketing for the Irvine Spectrum Center.
It can be difficult taking on contract work, having a full-time job. However, I'm lucky in my situation because I get a good amount of vacation time and comp time, and I'm picky about the contract work that I take because if I'm going to use my vacation time, I want to make sure it's worth it. And I do feel like it is worth it in most cases because it gives me an opportunity to stay connected with people in the industry, keep my skills up on what's happening in events and sports. So it's difficult, but again, worth it. You just kind of make it happen.
Another thing to be prepared for is asking your manager for PTO and giving them the heads up that you are working another job, right? I know your PTO is your time, is your paid time off. There is a respect level that comes with telling, and depending on your company, you might want to read your handbook or company guidelines, but you want to check and make sure you can actually work other jobs. You want to make sure you involve your manager in this 100%. Let them know how you working this event will benefit not only you, but the skills that you'll bring back for the company. Be open and honest, just like Julie Hershowitz, who is a senior associate from Whoop Labs. And you might remember her from episode 122 of the Game of Her Own podcast, saying yes to every experience.
I use my PTO. I'm lucky to work for a company that has unlimited PTO at the moment, but that wasn't always the case. When I was working in sports full time, I was able to kind of work remotely while at the Super Bowl and put out fires while also doing my contract work. Other times I've taken PTO, I've just made it work. And I've really taken gigs that have meant a lot to me and have made me want to build relationships and were really fun and enjoyable. So that's kind of how I weigh the options there. I also have really open and honest conversations with people around me that I work with and my supervisor about why things are important to me. And I use everything as a networking opportunity to, talk about the brands that I work for, talk about what I'm doing and things like that. So that is how I'm able to do that with a full-time position.
I also want you to be prepared for the grind. Now, remember what I said in the beginning. My first contract with Super Bowl, I was told this would be the worst and the best week of my life. Oh, it was accurate. It was a grind, and I don't know. I loved every second of it. There were times when I thought about pulling my hair out, but I refrained because my hair is way too expensive and also that would hurt. But when I look back on the entire experience as a whole, the good far outweighed the challenging times that you have when you're putting on such a large scale event. Listen to why Katie Dixon and Julie Hershowitz continue to take on contract work, even though they have full-time jobs and even though sometimes it's difficult work. First, let's hear from Katie.
My favorite part of contract work by far are the people that I work with and the networking that I get to do being out in the field. One thing I have to say is networking is so important, and keeping your relationships with your coworkers is super important, but it's definitely the people. The jobs can be brutal and they can be fun. So again, I'm picky about which ones I take, but I certainly go back for the people because I have fortunately met so many wonderful people doing contract work, and every year I meet somebody new. So it's really the main reason I do it.
And now Julie.
It's so fun. It's being able to pick and choose something different than what your day-to-day life might be. You never know where you're going to wind up. You never know what events you might work at. You never know what people you might meet, and you never know how those people might influence you along your journey. So I love working as an independent contractor. I love being able to work really cool events and making a big impact and making a difference in the lives of, fans that get to go to these different sporting events and other really big events around the country. But really, it's the people for me. Working the same event every year with the same people, it's like a family, and it makes me want to do more and more independent contract work with those same people.
Final two things when it comes to being prepared. Like, this is one that we kind of just forget about because we just kind of have it there, but get your resume ready now if it's been a while. In my experience, when you do get a lead, things tend to move kind of quickly. So it may not be like, it moves really quickly and you get your contract, boom. But that introduction, them getting to know you, them trying to understand who you are, make sure you have your resume ready. And if you have a portfolio, make sure you have that ready as well. Last but not least, one of my favorite topics, compensation. I will say this, my first contract, I was so excited. I wasn't even thinking about my hourly rate. Was that wrong? For me, it wasn't. But for you, if that's different, that's okay. Obviously, that's okay. You know that. You do you. Listen, I got paid, but my goal was an experience. My goal was networking. And honestly, I just wanted to try something new. I just wanted to take a minute and get away from baseball and get thrown in the fire and see if I would get burned. And I didn't. I'm still here. So when I started my own company, I had a different perspective on that. I had to establish boundaries about what I was willing to accept for my fee. I don't have a perfect formula to share with you. I wish that I did. I struggled with this when I started my own company. I will say this. If you are trying to come up with an hourly rate, because sometimes companies will ask you, what's your hourly rate? So if you're trying to come up with an hourly rate, think about your full-time job. Do you think you're being paid your value? Okay, so think about your full-time job and your salary and come up with your hourly rate. So do the math. I'm not good at math, so I'm not going to give you the equation, but I think you can do that, right? So a lot of times I know you can click on whatever HR supported system within your company, and actually it shows your hourly rate, even though you're salaried. Then if you don't feel like you're being paid the right amount, add a little more because you deserve it. Now, most companies will give you a per diem when you do this type of work. Most companies will put you in a hotel, so you don't have to pay for something like that. They figure that out into their costs, so you don't have to worry about that. Most companies will reimburse you for agreed upon expenses. So make sure all of that is in your contract before you sign. A lot of companies also will do an hourly rate and some will do a daily rate. So I know some companies will do a daily rate and tell you, here's the daily rate when you're on site. And sometimes it includes your per diem, sometimes it doesn't. So you just have to ask those questions to make sure that you are crystal clear. And it is okay to ask questions to make sure that you are crystal clear, because this is your time. This is your PTO. This is your first experience, second, third, whatever. Make sure you're getting what you want. All right, my friends, I hope to see you at future sporting events. If you want it, make it happen. I've given you some tools and resources to get it done. I have told you countless times, you can set up a free call with me. It's a 20-minute free consult. We can chat and I can help you with a few things. So don't be afraid to reach out to me. If you're looking for coaching services, you can also reach out to me as well. So there's a little button in there when you click to set up a time with me. It says, are you interested in coaching services? If you are, press yes. If you are not, and you just have like one quick question you want to ask me, I'm here for that too. I still do informational interviews. I love talking to women in sports and helping them get to where they want to be. Do me a favor. If this episode was helpful, make sure to share it with a friend who also wants to gain experience working large-scale events in the sports world. The more of us there, the better. Let's go. Until next week, my friends.